The day Elena Ramirez pulled up to the shuttered Crossroads Diner in her battered Toyota Corolla, with two sleepy children and exactly $512 to her name, every resident of Pine Creek Junction knew she was making a catastrophic mistake. In a town where family-owned businesses were passed down through generations and success was measured in decades of customer loyalty, this former city accountant with no restaurant experience clearly didn't understand what she was getting into. What these lifelong locals couldn't possibly know was that their biggest mistake wasn't doubting her determination, it would be underestimating what she was about to discover. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The faded neon sign of the Crossroads Diner flickered weakly against the early October sky, the once vibrant red letters now a dull rust color that matched the autumn leaves swirling across the cracked parking lot. The morning fog clung to the valley, shrouding the surrounding mountains in a ghostly haze, as Elena stared at the dilapidated building that represented her last, desperate chance at a fresh start. "Mom, it looks haunted," whispered Maya, Elena's 11-year-old daughter, peering through the car window with wide eyes, her dark curls falling across her face. "It's just dirty," countered 8-year-old Daniel, his face pressed against the glass, breath fogging his view. "Can I explore it?" Elena gripped the steering wheel tighter, pushing down the rising panic in her chest. The online auction listing had shown photos from at least a decade ago, a charming roadside establishment with chrome fixtures and red vinyl booths. The reality before her looked like it had weathered not just years of neglect, but a small apocalypse. "It needs some love," Elena finally said, forcing brightness into her voice. "But it's ours now." The ours felt strange on her tongue. After the divorce, the layoff from her accounting firm, and the subsequent months of financial free-fall, ownership of anything felt foreign. The diner had cost her nearly everything she had, $500 plus transfer fees, a desperate gamble on a foreclosure, auction listing that seemed too good to be true. Now she understood why. As they approached the building, keys in hand, Elena noticed a small gathering forming across the street. 3 middle-aged men stood outside Murray's Hardware, watching with undisguised curiosity and something that looked unsettlingly like amusement. "You must be the new owner," called a voice, and Elena turned to see a woman in her 60s approaching from the adjacent gas station. Her steel-grey hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her gait suggested someone who hadn't slowed down despite her age. "Loretta Wilson, I run the Pine Creek Gas and Grocery." "Elena Ramirez," she replied, extending her hand. "These are my children, Maya and Daniel." Loretta's handshake was firm, her eyes assessing. "Heard someone bought the old Crossroads at auction. Didn't expect a young family." Her gaze shifted to the diner. "Place has been empty since old Joe Harper died 3 years ago. Before that, it was failing for a good 5 years. We're going to reopen it," Elena said with more confidence than she felt. A short, barrel-chested man crossed the street to join them, wiping his hands on a red shop rag. "Stan Murray," he introduced himself. "Own the hardware store. You planning to flip the property? Because I should warn you, commercial real estate doesn't move fast around here." "No, we're going to run it," Elena replied. "A family diner. I'm thinking breakfast and lunch to start, maybe dinner eventually." Stan exchanged glances with Loretta, their skepticism palpable. "Got restaurant experience, have you?" "I was an accountant," Elena admitted. "But I've always loved cooking." "And an accountant," Stan interrupted, not bothering to hide his amusement. "Well, you'll be good at counting your losses, at least." Daniel tugged at Elena's sleeve. "Mum, can we go inside now?" Grateful for the interruption, Elena nodded and turned toward the diner, feeling the weight of the local stares on her. "Back." The door protested with a screech of rusted hinges as Elena pushed it open. The musty smell of abandonment greeted them. Dust, old grease, and something else she couldn't identify. Sunlight filtered weakly through grimy windows, illuminating. A scene frozen in time. Red vinyl booths lined one wall, their upholstery cracked and faded. A long counter with chrome-edged stools stretched along the opposite side, and behind it stood an industrial kitchen, partially visible through a pass-through window. "It's like in the movies," Maya whispered, her initial apprehension giving way to curiosity. "Like we time-traveled." Elena moved behind the counter, running her hand along the surface. Beneath the dust, the countertop was solid, real granite, not laminate. The equipment, while dated, appeared surprisingly substantial. Industrial refrigerators, a massive grill, a 6-burner stove. All of it would need thorough cleaning and servicing, but it wasn't the complete disaster she'd feared. A heavy hand knocked on the open door, and Elena looked up to see a tall man with salt and pepper hair and the weathered complexion of someone who spent considerable time outdoors. "Jack Brennan," he said by way of introduction. "Town maintenance, supervisor. Figured you might want the utilities turned on." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "That would be wonderful," Elena said, surprised by the offer of help. Jack nodded, his expression neutral but not unkind. "Water and electric are still connected, just need to be switched to your name. Gas line's been shut off for safety. We'll need inspection before reactivating." "How much will all that cost?" Elena asked, mentally calculating the dwindling remains of her savings. "Town inspection's $50, Jack replied. "Can't speak to what repairs might be needed. This place has been sitting empty a while." As Jack moved toward the back to check the utility connections, the door chimed again. A woman in her 40s entered, her blonde hair expertly styled, her clothes distinctly more upscale than anyone Elena had met so far. Well, the woman said, surveying the space with a critical eye. "So you're the one who outbid my client for this. Charming establishment." Elena straightened. "I'm Elena Ramirez. And you are?" "Diane Porter, Pine Creek Realty," she replied, extending a manicured hand. "My client was quite interested in this location. For the land value, of course, not this outdated dinosaur of a building." "The diner isn't for sale," Elena said firmly. "We just bought it." Diane smiled, the expression not reaching her eyes. "Of course, but when reality sets in, and it will, my card." She placed a glossy business card on the counter. "My client is developing several properties in the area. This location would fit perfectly into their plans." "What kind of development?" Elena asked. "Riverside Resort and Shopping Plaza," Diane replied. "Pine Creek is finally entering the 21st century. Tourism, retail, condominiums, progress." Jack emerged from the back, frowning at the realtor. "Thought I recognized that perfume." "Still trying to buy up the whole town, Diane." "Just the underutilized portions, Jack," Diane replied smoothly, "which, let's be honest, is most of it." She turned back to Elena. "Think about it. This building needs at least 100,000 in renovations to be operational. My client's offer would give you a tidy profit with none of the headache." "How much?" Elena asked, curiosity getting the better of her. 40,000, Diane said. "Generous, considering what you paid." "The listing said the property was appraised at 120, Elena countered. Diane waved a dismissive hand. "Pre-recession values. Completely unrealistic." "I'll keep your card," Elena said noncommittally, "but we're planning to reopen the diner." After Diane departed with a skeptical, "Good luck," Jack shook his head. "Mountain View Developments has been buying up properties all along Main Street. They've got plans to essentially remake Pine Creek into a tourist trap. Some folks think it'll bring jobs. Others aren't so sure. Maya had been exploring while the adults talked and now called out from the kitchen, "Mom, there's a safe back here!" Elena followed her daughter's voice to find her pointing at a floor safe partially hidden beneath a prep table. The heavy metal. A door was secured with a combination dial lock that looked like something from the 1960s. "Probably where old Joe kept the day's earnings," Jack commented. "Don't suppose you got the combination with the sale?" Elena shook her head. "The auction was property as is. I didn't get much paperwork beyond the deed." "Shame," Jack said, "though I doubt there's anything valuable in there. Joe wasn't exactly swimming in cash toward the end." As Jack left to activate the utilities, Elena began taking inventory of what they had to work with. The diner was approximately 2,000 square feet, with the main dining area taking up about 2/3 of the space. The kitchen was surprisingly well equipped, if outdated. A small office behind the kitchen contained a desk covered with yellowing, some papers, and an ancient computer that probably hadn't been turned on in a decade. "Mom, look!" Daniel called from behind the counter. He had discovered a stack of menus wedged in a drawer. The laminated pages showcased classic American diner fare, burgers, meatloaf, blue plate specials, at prices that made Elena smile. $3.95 for a complete breakfast. Those prices would need significant updating. As the afternoon progressed, more curious locals found reasons to stop by. Some, like Jack, seemed genuinely helpful. Others barely disguised their skepticism. "Never worked in food service, and you think you can run a diner?" remarked Patty Simmons, who ran the local beauty salon. "Honey, I've seen professional restaurateurs go under in 6 months in this town." "What makes you think you can succeed where old Joe failed?" asked Tom Jenkins, the town banker, when he stopped by to welcome her. That man had 40 years of experience and a loyal customer base. By evening, Elena had heard enough discouraging comments to last a lifetime. As she locked up the diner and led her exhausted children to their motel room, the only accommodation they could afford until the apartment above the diner could be cleaned and made habitable, doubts crept in like the autumn chill. Maya seemed to sense her mother's faltering confidence. "I think it's going to be amazing, Mom," she said, squeezing Elena's hand. "Those people don't know what you can do." The next morning, armed with cleaning supplies purchased from Murray's Hardware, where Stan had been surprisingly less condescending and more helpful, Elena and the children began the monumental task of bringing the Crossroads Diner back to life. They started with the dining area, removing layers of dust and grime from every surface. The vinyl booths, once cleaned, revealed themselves to be in better condition than expected, with only a few tiers that could be repaired. The chrome fixtures, polished with elbow grease and determination, began to gleam under the fluorescent lights. Jack Brennan returned mid-morning with the news that the utilities were now active. "Electric and water are on," he reported. "Gas inspector can come Friday. Should give you time to clean the kitchen first." "I can't thank you enough," Elena said. "You've been so helpful when everyone else seems to be waiting for us to fail." Jack shrugged. "Pine Creek folks are wary of outsiders and change. Been that way since I was a kid, but they come around eventually." He glanced around the half-cleaned diner. "Place is looking better already." "We've barely started," Elena sighed. "The kitchen is going to be the real challenge." "Could introduce you to Henry Garcia," Jack offered. "Retired now, but he used to service most of the restaurant equipment in the county. Might be willing to look at your appliances, tell you what's salvageable." By lunchtime, word had spread about the cleaning effort. Elena was surprised when Loretta Wilson appeared with 3 paper bags. "Thought you might be hungry," she said, placing the bags on a newly cleaned table. Sandwiches from the deli counter. "That's incredibly kind," Elena said, genuinely touched by the gesture. Loretta studied the progress they'd made. "You're determined. I'll give you that. Most would have run screaming after seeing the state of this place. I don't have the luxury of running, Elena admitted. This is pretty much our last shot. Something in Loretta's expression softened. Joe Harper was my cousin, she said unexpectedly. He loved this place. Would have broken his heart to see it sitting empty all this time. She hesitated. If you're serious about reopening, I might have some of his recipes. Nothing fancy, but the locals loved his cooking. That would be incredible, Elena said, hope flickering to life. As the afternoon wore on, Elena tackled the kitchen while the children continued cleaning the dining area. The industrial equipment was intimidating, but beneath the layers of grease and dust, most of it seemed mechanically sound. The walk-in refrigerator hummed to life when plugged in, and the massive grill appeared to have been well maintained before. The diner's closure. It was Maya who made the most interesting discovery of the day. While helping clean the office, she found a faded photograph tucked into the back of a drawer. It showed a younger version of the diner, its neon sign bright and new, with a group of men in military uniforms standing proudly in front. The date stamp on the back read July 1962. "Mom, look at this," Maya called, bringing the photo to the kitchen. The diner used to serve soldiers. Elena examined the photograph with interest. Pine Creek must have had some military connection back then. There was an Air Force communications outpost in the mountains, Jack explained when he returned, later to check on their progress. Closed in the late 80s when the Cold War ended, a lot of the airmen used to come to Crossroads for Joe's famous meatloaf. As evening approached, Elena sent the children to rest at the motel, while she continued working. The diner was still a disaster, but progress was visible. One day of cleaning had removed the worst of the grime, revealing the bones of what had once been a thriving establishment. Alone in the quiet building, Elena found herself drawn to the floor safe Maya had discovered. She knelt beside it, examining the combination lock. The model was ancient, probably original to the building. On a whim, she tried the default combination 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, knowing it wouldn't work but curious nonetheless. To her utter shock, the lock clicked and the handle turned. The safe's heavy door swung open with a metallic groan. Inside, she found several items. A small cash box containing a few $100s in old bills, a handwritten ledger, a folder of paperwork, and a sealed metal container about the size of a thick book, stamped with military markings, and the words, "Classified, authorized personnel only." Elena stared at the container, a chill running down her spine despite the warmth of the kitchen. What on earth was a classified military container doing in a small-town diner's floor safe? And, more importantly, what did it contain? Before she could decide whether to open it, the diner's front door chimed. Elena quickly closed the safe, sliding the prep table back over it, and went to the front. Diane Porter stood there, her expression calculating. "Working late, I see," the realtor remarked. "I've spoken with my client. They're willing to go to 50,000, cash deal, immediate closing." Elena hesitated, the discovery in the safe weighing on her mind. $50,000 would solve many problems. They could find a more practical business venture, something without the overwhelming startup costs of a restaurant. But something felt wrong about Diane's persistence. "Why is your client so interested in this specific location?" Elena asked. "There are other vacant properties on Main Street." "Strategic positioning," Diane replied smoothly. "This property has the best visibility from the highway, plus the corner lot allows for optimal traffic flow." It was a reasonable explanation, but Elena couldn't shake her suspicion. "I'm still not interested in selling," she said firmly, "but thank you for the offer." Diane's pleasant facade slipped momentarily. "You're making a mistake. Sentimentality is a poor business strategy. This town doesn't need another failing diner. It needs economic development." "Perhaps it needs both," Elena suggested. "Community gathering places and economic growth aren't mutually exclusive." After Diane left, Elena locked the diner and walked to the motel, her mind racing with questions about the military container in the safe. The discovery added another layer of complexity to an already overwhelming situation. At the motel, she found Maya and Daniel eagerly planning the diner's revival. "I've been researching diner menus online," Maya announced, showing Elena a notebook filled with ideas. "We should keep some classics, but add healthier options too. And I want to design the kids' menu," Daniel added, "with puzzles and games on the placemats." Their enthusiasm was contagious, momentarily pushing aside Elena's concerns about the mysterious container. "Those are fantastic ideas," she told them. "Tomorrow we'll keep cleaning and start planning our menu in more detail." That night, as the children slept, Elena sat by the motel window, researching on her laptop. She looked up the history of Pine Creek, finding brief mentions of the Air Force communications outpost that had operated from the early 1950s through the late 1980s. The facility had been part of the early warning system during the Cold War, designed to detect Soviet missile launches. She also searched for information about the Crossroads Diner, discovering that it had opened in 1957, founded by Joseph Harper Sr., who had served in the Korean War before returning to his hometown to start a business. The diner had thrived during the decades when the military installation was active. The connection between the diner and the military base seemed straightforward: proximity and patronage. But that didn't explain why a classified container would be hidden in the diner's safe. The next morning brought new challenges and unexpected support. Elena arrived at the diner to find Henry Garcia, the retired equipment technician Jack had mentioned, waiting outside. "Jack said you might need some help assessing your kitchen equipment," the older man said with a friendly smile. "I've been maintaining restaurant appliances in this county since before you were born." With Henry's expertise, Elena received both good and bad news. The walk-in refrigerator and freezer were salvageable with minor repairs. The grill needed a thorough cleaning but was fundamentally sound. The oven, however, would need to be replaced entirely, and the dishwasher required significant parts. "Looking at about $5,000 for the essential repairs," Henry concluded. "Another 8 to 10 if you want to replace the oven and dishwasher with new models." Eleanor's heart sank. Even 5,000 would strain her remaining resources to the breaking point. "I know that look," Henry said kindly. "Tell you what, I've got spare parts in my workshop from restaurants that closed over the years. Might be able to get that number down if you're not picky about everything matching." While Henry examined the equipment more thoroughly, Elena continued cleaning the kitchen. She was scrubbing the floors when Maya burst in from the dining area. "Mum, we have visitors!" Elena emerged to find 3 elderly men standing awkwardly near the entrance. The tallest, a thin man with a military straight posture despite his age, stepped forward. "I'm Robert Caldwell," he introduced himself. "These are my friends, George Peterson and Mike Donahue. We heard the Crossroads was reopening." "We're working on it," Elena confirmed, wiping her hands on her apron. "I'm Elena Ramirez." "We were regulars," George explained, his voice gravelly with age. "Every morning for nearly 40 years, until Joe passed and the place closed." "The booth in the corner was ours," Mike added, pointing to the last booth by the window. "Called it the Veterans Corner. All of us served. Air Force, mostly at the old communication station up the mountain." Eleanor's pulse quickened at the mention of the Air Force station. "I found an old photograph yesterday. Soldiers standing in front of the diner in 1962. Robert's face lit up. "That would have been when the Cuban Missile Crisis was happening. We were on high alert then. The Crossroads was like a second home to us, somewhere normal to go when the world seemed on the brink." Elena hesitated, then decided to take a chance. "I found something else yesterday, in the floor safe in the kitchen." The 3 men exchanged glances that sent a wave of unease through Elena. "The safe," Robert repeated carefully. "You got it. Open?" The combination wasn't exactly sophisticated, Elena admitted. There's a military container inside, classified according to the markings. The atmosphere in the diner shifted perceptibly. Robert straightened his already impeccable posture. "Ms. Ramirez, may we speak privately?" Elena nodded, leading the three veterans to the office, while Maya and Daniel continued cleaning the dining area under Henry's watchful eye. Once they were alone, Robert spoke in a lowered voice. "That container shouldn't be there. It should have been removed decades ago when the base closed." "What is it?" Elena asked. "Without seeing it, I can't be certain," Robert replied. "But given the time period and location, it could contain emergency protocols or," he hesitated, "authentication codes." "Authentication codes," Elena repeated. "For nuclear launch authorization," George explained quietly. The mountain facility was part of the early warning and command network. In case of Soviet attack, there were emergency procedures that bypassed normal channels. Elena stared at them in disbelief. "You're saying there might be nuclear launch codes in my diner's floor safe?" "Not current ones," Mike clarified hastily. "They would have been changed countless times since then. But historically significant, certainly, and potentially problematic if they fell into the wrong hands, even after all these years." "We need to contact the proper authorities," Robert said firmly. "The Air Force Historical Division, or perhaps the Department of Defense. This needs to be handled correctly." Elena nodded, stunned by the implications. "Of course, but how did it end up in the diner safe in the first place?" The three veterans exchanged uncomfortable glances again. "Joe Harper Sr. wasn't just a diner owner," Robert finally said. "He was our contingency point. If the base was compromised or communications cut off, he was our civilian contact with a secure line to Strategic Air Command." "A diner owner had access to nuclear launch protocols?" Eleanor asked incredulously. "The Cold War was a different time," George said grimly. "Preparations were made for worst-case scenarios we hoped would never happen. Joe was a decorated Korean War veteran with the highest security clearance. The diner's location at the Crossroads made it strategically significant, hence the name. When the base closed in '89, everything should have been removed or destroyed," Robert continued. "The container must have been overlooked during decommissioning. Or deliberately hidden," Mike suggested. "Joe Sr. was a cautious man. Might have kept it as insurance of some kind." Eleanor processed this stunning information, suddenly understanding Diane Porter's insistent interest in the property. Could someone else know about this? The development company that's trying to buy the property seems unusually determined. Robert frowned. "Mountain View Developments. They've been buying properties all through this region. Rumor has it they're backed by foreign investors. The old base property is among their acquisitions," George added. "They claim they're building a luxury resort, but there's been a lot of unusual activity up there, security fencing, satellite equipment." "You think they're looking for Cold War military secrets?" Elena asked, the situation seeming increasingly surreal. "Information is valuable," Robert said simply. "Cold War protocols, authentication methods, communication channels, even outdated. They could provide insight into current systems." Elena made a decision. "We should call the authorities immediately." "Wait," Mike cautioned. "If Mountain View is involved, we need to be careful. They have considerable influence locally, donations to the police department, sponsorships of town events. We should contact federal authorities directly." "I have a former colleague at the Pentagon," Robert offered. "Let me make a call first, establish the proper channel." As they formulated a plan, Elena's mind raced with implications. The abandoned diner she had purchased on a desperate whim had suddenly become the center of what sounded like an espionage thriller. Yet strangely, amid the anxiety, she felt a growing sense of purpose. The Crossroads Diner wasn't just a business venture anymore. It was a piece of history with significant meaning to the community. When they emerged from the office, they found an unexpected scene in the dining area. Word had spread about the cleaning effort, and several townspeople had arrived to help. Loretta was organizing a group wiping down the booths. Jack Brennan was repairing broken light fixtures. Even Stan Murray was there, replacing damaged floor tiles. "Hope you don't mind the invasion," Loretta called when she spotted Elena. Figured, many hands make light work. Elena was momentarily speechless, touched by the spontaneous show of support. "I don't know what to say. Thank you all." "Don't get sentimental," Stan grumbled, though his expression was softer than Elena had seen before. "Just figured it's better to have a functioning diner than an empty building bringing down property values." "What Stan means," Loretta translated, with a knowing smile, "is that we've missed having the Crossroads open. This place was the heart of Pine Creek for generations." As the volunteers worked, the three veterans quietly explained to Elena that Robert's Pentagon contact would be sending representatives the following day to retrieve the classified container. Until then, they advised leaving it secured in the safe. By evening, the transformation of the diner was remarkable. The dining area gleamed. Most of the kitchen equipment had been cleaned and assessed, and the ancient cash register had been replaced with a modern point-of-sale system donated by Tom Jenkins, the banker who had seemed so skeptical just the day before. "Don't read too much into it," he told Elena when she thanked him. "Old system wouldn't have handled credit cards anyway. Consider it an investment in Pine Creek's future." As the helpers departed, promising to return the next day to continue the renovation effort, Elena found herself standing alone in the diner that was rapidly becoming a true crossroads between past and present, between military history and civilian life, between her former existence and whatever future awaited her family. The mysterious container in the safe represented an unexpected connection to history, but it was the diner itself and the community's reaction to its potential revival that gave Elena hope. Perhaps the skeptics had been wrong. Perhaps what Pine Creek needed wasn't just economic development, but the restoration of its communal heart. Maya and Daniel joined her, their faces flushed with excitement after a day of working alongside the townspeople. "Mom, did you see how many people came to help?" Maya asked. "Even Ms. Porter's son was here. He said his mom would be mad, but he thinks the diner is cooler than another shopping mall. And Mr. Caldwell told me stories about when he was stationed at the base," Daniel added. "He said they used to have secret codes for ordering special milkshakes that weren't on the menu." Elena smiled, keeping to herself the knowledge that milkshake codes were likely the least of the secrets the Crossroads Diner had kept over the decades. Tomorrow would bring federal agents and the removal of the classified container, but it would also bring another day of progress toward reopening a beloved local institution. As they locked up for the night, Elena noticed a car parked across the street, its occupant watching the diner with obvious interest. The silhouette looked like Diane Porter, though Elena couldn't be certain in the growing darkness. The real estate agent's persistence took on a more sinister cast in light of what Elena had learned. If Mountain View Developments had connections to foreign interests seeking Cold War military intelligence, Diane's aggressive pursuit of the property might be more than simple business. "Is something wrong?" Maya asked, noticing her mother's distraction. Elena shook her head, not wanting to worry her daughter. "Just thinking about everything we still need to do before we can open." That night at the motel, Elena researched Mountain View Developments more thoroughly. The company had formed just 3 years earlier, but had rapidly expanded, acquiring properties throughout the region, particularly those with connections to former military installations. Their website showcased gleaming resort concepts and retail developments, emphasizing economic revitalization for struggling rural communities. What stood out to Elena, however, was the complete lack of information about the company's leadership or investors. The corporate structure was hidden behind layers of holding companies and offshore entities, unusual transparency for a development company working in small-town America. As she closed her laptop, Elena gazed at her sleeping children, wondering what she had inadvertently drawn them into. The diner was supposed to be their fresh start, not an entanglement in decades-old military secrets and possible espionage. Yet despite these concerns, Elena felt a growing determination. The Crossroads Diner represented something important to Pine Creek, a gathering place, a repository of shared history, a symbol of continuity. Its significance extended far beyond its commercial value, something Mountain View developments clearly didn't understand or respect. Whatever happened with the classified container tomorrow, Elena was more certain than ever. The Crossroads Diner would reopen, and it would remain the heart of Pine Creek for generations to come. The following morning arrived with a sense of urgency Elena hadn't anticipated. Shortly after dawn, a discreet knock at her motel room door revealed Robert Caldwell, his expression grave. "My Pentagon contact called," he said quietly. "They're sending a team, but there's been a complication. Satellite imagery shows unusual activity at the old base site. They're concerned about Mountain View's timing." Elena glanced back at her still sleeping children. "What does that mean for us?" "It means we should retrieve the container immediately, before anyone else realizes what's there." Robert's military bearing was more pronounced than ever. "George and Mike are already at the diner." 20 minutes later, Elena unlocked the Crossroads front door. The three veterans moved with surprising agility for their age, immediately securing the perimeter by drawing blinds and checking for observers. "Clear," Mike announced, his decades-old training evident in his methodical approach. In the kitchen, Elena knelt beside the floor safe, her fingers turning the dial with deliberate precision. The lock mechanism clicked, and the heavy door swung open. The classified container sat exactly as she had left it, its official markings stark against the aged metal. Robert carefully lifted it out, his hands trembling slightly. "After all these years," he murmured, "I never thought I'd see one of these again." "Is it what you suspected?" Elena asked. George nodded grimly. "Emergency authentication codes and procedures, in case of decapitation strike, when normal command structures were compromised. These would have bypassed standard protocols," Mike explained, "given regional commanders direct launch authority if Washington was destroyed." The weight of history in that small metal box sent a chill through Elena. Codes that could have initiated nuclear war, hidden beneath a small-town diner for decades. "Federal agents will arrive by noon," Robert said, placing the container in a secure courier bag he'd brought. "Until then, we'll keep this with us. Too risky to leave it here unattended." Elena agreed, though part of her wondered if she was making a terrible mistake in trusting three elderly veterans with such a sensitive item. But their training and experience far outweighed her own in these matters. "What about the diner?" She asked, "Should we continue working today as if nothing's happening?" "Absolutely," George replied firmly. "Maintaining normal appearances is crucial. The more people around, the less suspicious our activities will seem." As the morning progressed, Elena marveled at how quickly the renovation efforts had mobilized. Volunteers arrived in waves, retirees with carpentry skills, teenagers offering muscle, women bringing homemade meals for the workers. The cynical part of Elena wondered if curiosity was the primary motivator, but the genuine warmth directed her way suggested something deeper. "Towns needed a project like this," Loretta explained during a break. "Pine Creek's been losing its identity bit by bit. First the base closed, then the sawmill. Young folks moving away, old businesses shuttering. Crossroads was always more than just a diner. It was where life happened. Elena was arranging delivered supplies when Diane Porter strode in, her professional smile firmly in place, though her eyes darted around the space with obvious calculation. "My, what progress!" she exclaimed with manufactured enthusiasm. "Though I'm concerned you're investing so much effort before inspections. Commercial kitchens have strict requirements." "Everything's being done to code," Jack Brennan interjected, appearing beside Eleanor. "I've arranged for the health inspector to visit next week." Diane's smile tightened. "How efficient! I've been authorized to increase our offer to $75,000. Given the challenging economic climate, it's quite generous." The sudden jump in price confirmed Elena's suspicions. Whatever Mountain View wanted, they wanted it badly. "Still not interested in selling," Elena replied firmly, "but thank you." Diane's pleasant facade cracked momentarily. "You're being unreasonable. This property's highest value is in redevelopment, not as an outdated diner." "That's your opinion," Elena countered. "The community seems to disagree." As if to emphasize her point, Stan Murray entered carrying boxes of brand-new glassware. "Discount price," he announced gruffly. "Can't have a diner serving coffee in chipped mugs." Diane observed this exchange with narrowed eyes before departing with a clipped, "You'll regret this obstinance." By mid-morning, the diner hummed with activity. Eleanor divided her attention between directing volunteers, consulting with Henry about equipment repairs, and watching for the federal agents Robert had promised. The veterans maintained a casual presence, positioning themselves strategically. Robert near the entrance, George watching the street, Mike keeping the courier bag within arm's reach. "Mom, look what I found!" Daniel called from the storage room. He emerged carrying a dust-covered wooden sign carved with Harper's famous meatloaf, secret recipe since 1957. "That's Joe Sr.'s original sign," Mike explained, momentarily distracted from his vigilance. "Had it made when the base commander declared his meatloaf the best he'd ever tasted. Became the diner's signature dish." "Do you have the recipe?" Elena asked. "Loretta might," Mike replied. "She's Joe's cousin. That meatloaf kept this place running through some lean years." The discussion of recipes was interrupted by the arrival of two polished black SUVs outside. 4 individuals in conservative suits emerged, their bearing unmistakably military despite their civilian attire. Robert straightened, approaching Elena. "They're here. Let me handle the initial contact." The lead agent, a woman in her 40s with close-cropped hair and alert eyes, entered the diner. "Colonel Caldwell?" she asked, spotting Robert immediately. "Ms. Haze," Robert replied with evident relief. "Thank you for coming promptly." Haze surveyed the busy diner, her expression revealing nothing. "Is there somewhere we can speak privately?" Elena led them to the office, where the 4 agents conducted a brisk but thorough verification of both Robert's identity and their own credentials. Satisfied, Robert produced the courier bag. "Container appears intact," he reported. "Seal unbroken." Agent Haze examined it carefully before placing it in a secure case. "We'll need statements from everyone involved in the discovery. This situation is unprecedented." "Is it dangerous?" Elena asked. "The information, I mean." "Not in a practical sense," Haze replied. "These codes were deactivated decades ago, but they reveal operational procedures and authentication methods that could potentially inform analysis of current systems. Which makes them valuable to certain parties," another agent added meaningfully. Elena described finding the safe and her interactions with Mountain View developments, including their escalating offers for the property. "We've been monitoring Mountain View for some time," Haze admitted. "Their acquisition pattern around decommissioned military sites raised flags. Your discovery may help connect some dots." After taking detailed statements, Haze addressed the concerned group. We'll handle the container. As for Mountain View, I recommend continuing normal operations. Drawing attention to your suspicions could complicate our investigation. So just keep renovating the diner? Elena asked. Exactly, Haze confirmed. The best cover is no cover at all. Just do what you would naturally do. As the agents prepared to leave, Haze took Elena aside. Ms. Ramirez, you've stumbled into something significant. I can't share details, but your decision to contact authorities through Colonel Caldwell was correct. Some people would have seen the container as leverage or a payday. It never occurred to me to do anything else, Elena replied honestly. Haze handed her a business card with only a phone number. If Mountain View's pressure escalates or anything unusual occurs, call immediately. After the agents departed with the container, the three veterans appeared simultaneously relieved and nostalgic. Closes a chapter, George remarked. Those codes represented the darkest possibilities of our era. Living with that responsibility, it stays with you. The diner was our sanctuary, Mike added, where we could pretend the world wasn't 30 minutes from annihilation. Elena understood then why reopening the Crossroads meant so much. To them, it represented not just communal gathering, but psychological healing, a place where the weight of history could be set aside, if only for the duration of a cup of coffee. Throughout the afternoon, renovation efforts continued unabated. The community's enthusiasm seemed to grow rather than diminish, with unexpected offers of assistance emerging hourly. The local electrician volunteered to update the wiring at cost. A retired seamstress offered to repair the torn vinyl booths. The high school's woodshop teacher brought students to refinish the counter. I don't understand, Elena confessed to Loretta during a quiet moment. Yesterday, everyone seemed convinced I would fail. Today, half the town is helping. Loretta smiled knowingly. Pine Creek folks test newcomers. They've seen plenty arrive with big dreams, only to abandon them. When things get tough, you show determination by diving into the work yourself. That matters here. By evening, the transformation was remarkable. The dining area gleamed with polished chrome and refurbished booths. The kitchen equipment had been cleaned, repaired, or replaced. The ancient cash register had given way to a modern point-of-sale system. Even the exterior had received attention. Fresh paint, repaired signage, new lighting. As volunteers departed, promising to return the following day, Elena found herself momentarily alone in the diner. The silence felt different now, not the emptiness of abandonment, but the anticipation of renewal. She walked through the space, envisioning customers at the booths, coffee brewing, plates of comfort food emerging from the kitchen. The fantasy was interrupted by the unmistakable sound of breaking glass. Elena rushed to the kitchen to find the back window shattered, shards glittering across the freshly mopped floor. Outside in the alley, a dark figure sprinted away. She reached for her phone to call the police when another crash echoed from the dining area, a brick through the front window wrapped in paper secured by a rubber band. Heart pounding, Elena cautiously approached. The note attached to the brick contained 3 words: sell or else. The local police response was prompt but underwhelming. Officer Jenkins, a young man who clearly felt out of his depth, documented the damage and took Elena's statement, but seemed skeptical about the threat's seriousness. Probably just kids, he suggested, despite Elena's insistence about Mountain View's escalating pressure. We get vandalism occasionally, nothing to connect it to a legitimate business like Mountain View. After he departed, promising increased patrols, Elena called Agent Haze's number. Anticipated escalation, Haze commented after hearing the details. Classic intimidation tactics. We'll have an unmarked presence nearby starting tonight, but maintain normal operations. The more threatened they feel by your progress, the more likely they are to make mistakes. Elena hung up, feeling both reassured and unsettled. The situation had progressed from buying a rundown diner to being caught between foreign agents and federal investigators. Yet, strangely, her determination had only strengthened. "Mum, what happened?" Maya asked when Elena returned to the motel. Both children could tell something was wrong despite her attempt at normalcy. Elena considered shielding them, but opted for an edited truth. "Someone broke some windows at the diner, probably to scare us into selling the property." "Did it work?" Daniel asked, his young face serious. "No," Elena replied firmly. "It just means we're doing something right. When people try to intimidate you, it usually means they're afraid of what you might accomplish." Maya's expression hardened with unexpected maturity. "We're not giving up our diner." "Our diner," Elena repeated, warmed by her daughter's possessive determination. "That's exactly right." The following morning, Elena arrived at the Crossroads to find Jack Brennan and Stan Murray already there, measuring the broken windows for replacement. "Heard about the vandalism," Jack said without preamble. "Town maintenance includes ensuring public safety. I've redirected a security camera to cover your alley." Stan's contribution was more surprising. "My nephew's security company is installing a basic system. No charge." At Elena's startled expression, he added gruffly, "Can't have hooligans thinking they can break windows on Main Street without consequences." Word of the incident spread quickly. By mid-morning, the diner was once again filled with volunteers, their presence both practical assistance and silent protest against intimidation. The broken windows were replaced before noon. Security measures were enhanced. Work continued with renewed vigor. "This is how Pine Creek responds to threats," Loretta explained, organizing a group cleaning the newly installed stove. "We close ranks." Elena observed with growing amazement how the community had adopted her struggle as their own. The Crossroads wasn't just her project anymore. It had become a symbol of the town's resilience and identity. Each passing hour brought the diner closer to operational status, far faster than Elena could have accomplished alone. Late afternoon brought an unexpected visitor, Tom Jenkins, the banker who had initially been so skeptical. "I've been reviewing your situation," he began, without preamble. "Initial capital investment, projected operating costs, potential revenue streams." Elena braced for another lecture about the financial foolishness of her venture. "The Pine Creek Community Bank would like to offer you a small business loan," he continued, surprising her completely. "Favorable terms, specifically for equipment upgrades and initial inventory. Contingent on proper licensing and inspections, of course." "Why?" Elena asked bluntly. "You were convinced I would fail." "Several factors changed my assessment," Jenkins replied. "Community support indicates potential customer base. Your background in accounting suggests financial competence. The involvement of experienced advisors like Loretta with family recipes improves viability." He paused. "And frankly, any business Mountain View wants to eliminate this badly must have genuine value." The loan offer represented more than financial assistance. It was validation. Someone with professional skepticism had evaluated her chances and found them sufficient to risk capital. "I'll need to review the terms," Elena said, maintaining her business acumen despite her excitement. "But I'm definitely interested." Jenkins handed her a folder of paperwork. "Review and respond by Friday. Small-town banks need community businesses as much as businesses need banks. Symbiotic relationship." The day's momentum continued with the arrival of the health inspector, who provided preliminary guidance on remaining modifications needed for certification. Though the list was substantial, it wasn't prohibitive, and many items were already being addressed by the volunteer workforce. By evening, the diner had progressed from disaster to promising work in progress. Elena stood in the kitchen, surveying the space that would soon produce meals for the community, feeling a sense of ownership and possibility that had been absent from her life for too long. Her reverie was interrupted by Maya's excited voice. "Mom, look what Loretta brought." Elena emerged to find Loretta placing a worn, leather-bound book on the counter. "Joe's recipe book," Loretta explained. "Been in my attic since he passed. Figured it belongs here now." The handwritten volume contained decades of culinary wisdom, Harper family classics, customer favorites, notes on preparation techniques, and presentation. Most importantly, it included the legendary meatloaf recipe that had sustained the diner through decades of operation. "This is invaluable," Elena said, carefully turning the yellowed pages. "Thank you doesn't seem adequate." "Do honor the recipes by using them," Loretta replied simply. "That's all the thanks needed." As the volunteers dispersed for the evening, Eleanor noticed Robert, George, and Mike lingering, their expressions suggesting unfinished business. "There's something else you should know," Robert began once they were alone. "Something about the diner's history that might be relevant to your renovation." George produced an old photograph, different from the one Maya had found earlier. This image showed the diner's interior circa 1960, focusing on a particular section of wall behind the counter. "See this panel?" Mike pointed to a seemingly ordinary section of wainscoting. "Concealed a secure communications terminal, direct line to the base, camouflaged as a diner fixture." Eleanor examined the photograph, then looked at the corresponding wall in the present-day diner. The panel had been replaced during a later renovation, but the dimensions matched. "Are you saying there might still be Cold War communication equipment hidden in my walls?" she asked incredulously. "Unlikely the equipment remains functional," Robert clarified, "but the access point and wiring might still exist. Worth investigating before you complete renovations." This revelation explained Mountain View's specific interest in the property beyond the classified container. If they were seeking Cold War intelligence, direct access to a secure military communication line, even a decommissioned one, would be valuable. "We should check immediately," Elena decided. Using the photograph as reference, they located the exact position of the former panel. Jack's careful removal of the current wainscoting revealed a metal access door built into the wall studs, painted over multiple times but unmistakably intentional. "I'll be damned," Jack muttered. 40 years in building maintenance, and I never knew this was here." The access door required significant effort to open after decades, sealed shut. Inside, they found not the communication equipment itself, presumably removed during decommissioning, but the connection infrastructure. Heavy-duty conduit, specialized wiring, and most interestingly, a small metal plate with coordinates and what appeared to be a facility identification code. "This confirms it," Robert said quietly. "Crossroads was an official emergency relay point. These coordinates likely indicate the exact transmission path to the mountain facility." "Should we contact Agent Haze?" Eleanor asked. "Immediately," Robert agreed. "This physical evidence corroborates what was in the container. Mountain View's interest in both properties, the diner and the former base, suggests they're piecing together the old communication network." Elena made the call, describing their discovery with as much detail as possible. Haze promised to send a technical team the following morning to document and secure the site. "Until then, replace the panel and continue normal operations," she instructed. "If Mountain View has surveillance on the property, we don't want to alert them to the discovery." That night at the motel, Eleanor found herself unable to sleep. The diner had evolved from a desperate gamble into something far more complex, a historical artifact, a target for potential espionage, and increasingly, a community rallying point. The responsibility weighed heavily, particularly concerning her children's safety. Yet amid these concerns, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in years: purpose. The Crossroads wasn't just a business venture, it represented heritage, community resilience, and now national security. Her accounting career had provided financial stability, but never this sense of meaningful contribution. Maya stirred in the adjoining bed. "Mom, are you awake?" "Just thinking, sweetie," Elena replied softly. "I heard Mr. Caldwell talking about secret military stuff in the diner," Maya said, her voice hushed. "Is that why those people broke our windows?" Elena considered how to respond. Maya was perceptive and mature for her age. Sheltering her completely seemed both impossible and potentially unwise. "The diner has an interesting history," Elena acknowledged. "It was important to the town in ways we're still discovering. Some people think that makes the property valuable for reasons beyond just serving food. But we're not selling," Maya stated rather than asked. "No, we're not selling," Elena confirmed. "The Crossroads matters to this community. It deserves to be restored." Maya smiled in the darkness. "I told Daniel we were part of something special. He thought I just meant having our own restaurant." "It is special," Elena agreed, "and so is this town. They've welcomed us in a way I never expected." "Because you didn't give up," Maya observed. "Wisely, even when everyone said you should." As her daughter drifted back to sleep, Elena reflected on this simple truth. Her refusal to abandon hope when faced with overwhelming odds had gradually earned the community's respect and support. Perhaps the lesson wasn't just for her children, but for the town itself, a reminder that perseverance could transform even the most desperate situations into opportunities for renewal. Tomorrow would bring federal agents, continued renovations, and likely more pressure from Mountain View, but it would also bring Pine Creek one day closer to reclaiming its communal heart. For the first time since embarking on this journey, Elena felt absolute certainty that she had made the right choice, not just for her family's future, but for an entire community's legacy. Dawn broke over Pine Creek with unusual activity. Elena arrived at the diner to find a discreet federal presence already established. 2 technicians in unmarked vans, posing as telecommunications workers, examining the newly discovered wall panel with sophisticated equipment. Agent Haze conferred with them in hushed tones, her expression revealing nothing to casual observers. "Morning," Haze greeted Elena professionally. "We've confirmed your discovery is significant. The conduit leads directly to the mountain facility through underground channels designed to withstand nuclear attack. These systems were built when continuity of government was the highest priority." "What exactly does Mountain View want with outdated communication systems?" Elena asked, keeping her voice low. "The technology itself is obsolete," Haze acknowledged. "But the methodology, how secure communications were established, encrypted, and maintained, remains relevant. Some principles haven't changed despite technological evolution." The technicians completed their documentation and resealed the wall panel with remarkable efficiency, leaving no trace of their investigation. As they departed, Haze handed Elena a small device resembling a key fob. "Panic button," she explained. "Direct line to our team. Use it if you face immediate threats." The gesture confirmed the seriousness of Elena's situation more effectively than any briefing. Federal agencies didn't distribute emergency signaling devices for vandalism concerns. "We've placed surveillance on the property," Haze added. "Continue your renovation as planned. The more normal everything appears, the better." After Haze left, the diner quickly filled with volunteers continuing yesterday's work. The community's enthusiasm hadn't diminished. If anything, the vandalism incident had strengthened their commitment. Elena marveled at how seamlessly they had incorporated her project into their collective identity. Health inspector's preliminary report came back, Jack announced mid-morning, waving an official-looking document. Nothing critical that would prevent opening. Standard modifications for commercial food service. This news triggered a spontaneous cheer from the assembled workers. Elena felt a surge of emotion. Just days ago, passing inspection had seemed an impossible hurdle. Now, with community expertise and labor, it was simply another milestone on the path to opening. Elena immersed herself in practical tasks, organizing the kitchen according to efficiency workflows, inventorying equipment, needs, planning preparation areas. Her accounting background proved unexpectedly valuable in designing systems for inventory management and cost control. Around noon, Maya burst into the kitchen, her expression unusually serious. "Mom, there's a man taking pictures of the diner from across the street, not like a tourist. He's photographing everyone who comes and goes." Elena peered discreetly through the kitchen window. The man's professional camera and systematic documentation of the property confirmed this wasn't innocent interest. After a moment's hesitation, she pressed the panic button Haze had provided. The response was immediate but subtle. A delivery truck that had been parked down the street pulled forward. Two individuals emerged, approached the photographer, and engaged him in conversation that quickly became confrontational. Within minutes, the man departed hastily, leaving his equipment behind. One of the agents entered the diner casually, ordering coffee at the temporarily established beverage station, where volunteers had been keeping themselves caffeinated. "Situation addressed," he murmured to Elena while stirring unnecessary sugar into his cup. "Corporate espionage professional, not amateur surveillance. Escalation of Mountain View's intelligence gathering." Elena felt a chill despite the kitchen's warmth. "They're getting desperate." "Good sign for our investigation," the agent replied. "Desperation leads to mistakes." The remainder of the day passed without further incidents, though Elena found herself constantly scanning for threats. The renovation continued progressing at a remarkable pace. Henry Garcia and his team completed the kitchen equipment installation, transforming the space into a professional operation. The dining area now featured restored booths, polished tables, and gleaming chrome fixtures that captured the diner's 1950s aesthetic while meeting modern expectations. Late afternoon brought Tom Jenkins with completed loan paperwork and a surprising announcement. "The bank's board approved additional funding beyond your requested amount," he informed Elena. "Contingent on your acceptance, of course." "Why the increase?" Elena asked, suspicious of unexpected generosity after years of financial struggle. "Community Investment Initiative," Jenkins explained. "The board recognizes that Crossroads represents more than a single business, its potential revitalization for Main Street. Your success could inspire additional entrepreneurs." While reviewing the documentation, Elena noted that the terms were indeed favorable. Below-market interest, gradual repayment schedule, provisions for seasonal fluctuations, common in restaurant operations. "This seems too good to be true," she admitted. Jenkins actually smiled, a rare occurrence. "Small-town banking operates differently than corporate finance. We evaluate character and community impact alongside balance sheets. You've demonstrated exceptional determination. The town's response to your efforts is unprecedented in recent memory." After signing the paperwork, Elena felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Financial constraints had been her greatest practical concern. With adequate capitalization, proper equipment, and community support, the diner's prospects had transformed from desperate gamble to viable enterprise. This optimism carried her through the evening's tasks. She was reviewing applications from local teenagers seeking part-time employment when Daniel appeared at her elbow, bouncing with excitement. "Mom, the box we found in the storage room, It has all the old uniforms. Can I try one on? The discovery of original Crossroads Diner uniforms, classic 1950s style with peaked caps for the cooks and ruffled aprons for servers, prompted an impromptu fashion show. Volunteers modeled the vintage outfits, their laughter echoing through the space that had been silent for too long. "We should incorporate these into the reopening," Loretta suggested. "Modern versions with the same aesthetic. Honor the history while moving forward." The mixture of nostalgia and renewal perfectly captured Elena's vision for the Crossroads. She wanted to preserve what had made the diner special while ensuring it remained relevant for current customers. The uniforms symbolized this balance, honoring tradition without being trapped by it. As evening approached, the three veterans arrived for their daily check-in. They had appointed themselves unofficial security consultants, their military training, finding purpose in protecting the diner and its secrets. "Quiet day on the Mountain View front," Robert reported. "Their official operations continue at the mountain facility. Construction equipment, supply deliveries, standard development activities. On the surface." "But their CEO arrived this morning," George added. "Private jet to the county airport, helicopter to the site. Unusual for a routine construction project." Haze mentioned their desperation, Elena shared. "The photographer today was professional corporate intelligence." Mike nodded grimly. "They're running out of time. Whatever they're searching for has a deadline." This observation lingered in Elena's mind as she locked up for the night. If Mountain View operated on a timetable, their pressure would likely intensify as that deadline approached. The broken windows might be just the beginning of escalating intimidation. At the motel, Elena found both children absorbed in diner-related projects. Maya designing a children's menu with Pine Creek-themed activities. Daniel sketching a secret agent milkshake special inspired by the veterans' stories. "Mr. Caldwell said spies used to meet at the diner," Daniel explained excitedly. "They'd order special milkshakes as code words. I thought we could make a milkshake with hidden layers of different flavors." His innocent transformation of Cold War intrigue into culinary creativity touched Elena deeply. Children possessed remarkable resilience, finding joy and possibility where adults perceived only danger and complication. "That's a wonderful idea," she encouraged. "Maybe we could have a whole section of secret menu items with fun combinations." Maya looked up from her design work. "When are we moving into the apartment?" The motel manager said 3 more families checked in today for the weekend festival. They might need our room. The apartment above the diner, originally the Harper family's residence, remained a significant renovation challenge. While structurally sound, it required extensive updating to be habitable. Between the diner's revival and the emerging security situation, Elena had prioritized the commercial space. "Soon," she promised. "Once the diner passes final inspection, we'll focus on our living quarters." "I want the bedroom that overlooks Main Street," Daniel declared. "I can be a lookout." His statement carried unintended significance, given the circumstances. Elena wondered if the children sensed more about the situation than she had shared. Their resilience continually amazed her, adapting to dramatic life changes, embracing an uncertain future, finding excitement in challenges that would overwhelm many adults. The following morning brought Pine Creek's weekend farmers market to the square adjacent to the diner. The market's proximity provided natural foot traffic and curiosity about the renovation progress. Elena seized the opportunity, setting up a small table outside with sample menus and renovation photos. "Soft opening next Saturday," she announced to interested market-goers. "Limited menu while we fine-tune operations." The community's response was overwhelmingly positive. Locals stopped to share memories of the original Crossroads, inquire about employment opportunities, or simply offer encouragement. Several farmers, discussed potential supply arrangements for fresh ingredients, local eggs, seasonal produce, artisanal cheese. This connection between local agriculture and food service used to be standard, remarked an elderly apple grower, before corporate supply chains took over. Good to see the tradition returning. By mid-morning, the impromptu marketing effort had generated significant anticipation for the reopening. Elena maintained a comprehensive sign-up sheet for opening day reservations that quickly filled with names and contact information. The momentum was abruptly interrupted by the arrival of a black SUV with tinted windows. Diane Porter emerged, accompanied by a distinguished man in an expensive suit whose commanding presence immediately drew attention. "Ms. Ramirez," Diane called with artificial warmth. "Allow me to introduce Victor Kazarian, CEO of Mountain View Developments." Elena recognized the name from her research. An international businessman with diverse holdings across multiple industries. His presence in Pine Creek for what should have been a routine property negotiation confirmed the situation's significance. "Mr. Kazarian," Elena acknowledged with professional courtesy, "what brings the CEO of a major development corporation to our small renovation project?" Kazarian's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Curiosity, Ms. Ramirez. Your determination has become something of a legend among my acquisition team. I wanted to meet the woman who refuses to recognize an exceptional opportunity." "I recognize opportunity quite well," Elena replied evenly. "Just not the same one you're seeing." Kazarian surveyed the bustling farmers' market, the partially renovated diner, the community members watching their interaction with undisguised interest. "Charming," he commented, his tone suggesting the opposite. "But sentimentality is poor business strategy. My final offer, $100,000, 5 minutes of paperwork for significant profit on your $500 investment." The substantial increase revealed both Mountain View's desperation and their resources. Many would consider the offer irresistible, immediate financial security, without months of hard work and uncertainty. "The Crossroads isn't for sale," Elena stated firmly. "Its value to this community exceeds monetary measurement." Kazarian's expression hardened. "Communities evolve, Ms. Ramirez. Pine Creek's future lies in development, tourism, modern amenities, not clinging to outdated establishments serving mediocre food to declining populations." His dismissive assessment triggered murmurs from observing locals. Elena noticed several farmers moving closer, their body language protective. "You misunderstand Pine Creek," she responded. "This community doesn't need outside interests determining its future. It needs sustainable local businesses that preserve its character while adapting to changing times." "Noble sentiments," Kazarian replied with thinly veiled condescension. "Perhaps you'll maintain them when operational realities emerge. Restaurants fail at alarming rates even without unexpected complications." The threat hung in the air between them. Elena maintained eye contact, refusing to be intimidated. "Is that why your operatives vandalize my property? To create unexpected complications?" Kazarian's expression revealed nothing. Corporate development always faces resistance from those resistant to progress. Change is inevitable, Ms. Ramirez. The only question is whether you'll benefit from it or become another casualty. Before Eleanor could respond, Stan Murray stepped forward. "Think that's enough business discussion for a Saturday morning," he announced, his bulky frame creating a physical barrier between Elena and the developers. "Markets for buying produce and socializing, not property intimidation." Several other community members moved to flank Stan, creating a united front. Kazarian assessed the situation with cold calculation before offering a tight smile. "Consider the offer open until Monday," he told Elena. "After that, market forces will determine outcomes." As the developers departed, the protective circle around Elena remained. The community's response to the confrontation demonstrated a fundamental shift in her status from outsider to someone worth defending. "Man's got some nerve," Stan muttered, "coming to our market, insulting our town." "Mountain View's been courting council members with promises of tax revenue and jobs," Jack added. "But seeing their methods up close doesn't sit right." Elena was touched by their support, but concerned about potential repercussions. "I don't want anyone risking their businesses or properties because of my situation." "Not your situation anymore," Loretta corrected firmly. "Ours. Crossroads matters to Pine Creek. Those who remember what it represented and those too young to have experienced it but understand its potential." This collective ownership of her vision represented a transformation Elena couldn't have imagined when she purchased the dilapidated diner just days earlier. The community had adopted her struggle as emblematic of their own desire to preserve identity while embracing necessary change. The remainder of the day brought continuous progress. Final inspections were scheduled, equipment installations completed, menu planning refined with Loretta's guidance on traditional favorites balanced with contemporary additions. What had initially seemed an impossible timeline, reopening within 2 weeks of purchase, now appeared achievable through community mobilization. Evening brought Agent Haze with concerning news. Mountain View's activity at the mountain facility has intensified, she reported during a private meeting in Elena's office. Satellite imagery shows excavation focusing on the original communication bunker. They're specifically targeting the terminus of the conduit system we found in your wall. Kazarian himself visited today, Elena shared. Final offer of 100,000 with a Monday deadline. Confirms our assessment of urgency, Hayes noted. Whatever they're seeking has significant value and time sensitivity. What happens Monday if I maintain refusal? Hayes's expression was grave. Based on similar operations we've investigated, they'll likely pursue alternative acquisition methods, legal harassment, health code complaints, zoning challenges, permit issues, or less legal approaches. Sabotage, directed accidents, financial interference. They'd go that far for outdated Cold War information. The value isn't in the technology itself, Hayes explained. It's in the methodology, how secure systems were designed, how authentication protocols functioned. These fundamental approaches inform current systems. In the wrong hands, such insights provide advantage for compromising modern security. The implications were sobering. Elena had purchased a diner hoping for a fresh start. Instead, she'd acquired a property with significant national security implications. "What should I do?" she asked finally. "Exactly what you're doing," Hayes advised. "Continue renovation. Proceed with opening plans. Maintain community visibility. Our team will handle Mountain View's activities." After Hayes departed, Elena found herself alone in the quiet diner. Shadows lengthened across the newly polished floor as sunset painted the windows in amber light. The space had transformed remarkably, physical renovation mirroring her own evolving relationship with Pine Creek. She walked through the dining area, imagining it filled with customers. The vision sustained her through moments of doubt, families in booths sharing meals and conversation, counter seats occupied by regulars, exchanging community news, staff moving efficiently between tables with plates of comfort food. The Crossroads would be more than a business. It would be a gathering place where connections formed, where community identity was reinforced through shared experience. This function, bringing people together in an increasingly isolated world, represented value no development corporation could replicate with luxury condominiums or retail outlets. As Elena prepared to leave, Maya and Daniel arrived with Loretta, who had taken them to the local library while Elena worked. "We found old newspaper articles about the diner," "Maya," announced excitedly. "Look at this one from 1962. It shows the diner was a fallout shelter during the Cuban Missile Crisis. People gathered there to listen to President Kennedy's speeches." The yellowed clipping showed the crossroads packed with anxious citizens, their faces reflecting the existential uncertainty of that historical moment. The accompanying article described how Joe Harper Sr. had kept the diner open 24 hours during the crisis, providing both physical sustenance and emotional comfort to a frightened community. "The Crossroads has always been more than just a restaurant," Loretta observed. "During every significant moment in Pine Creek's history, it's where people gathered to celebrate, to mourn, to face challenges together." Daniel held up another article from 1969. They had a special moon landing menu, space-themed milkshakes, and lunar landing pancakes. Everyone watched the astronauts on a TV they brought in specially. These historical glimpses reinforced Elena's growing conviction. The diner's value extended beyond economics or even Cold War secrets. It represented community resilience across generations. During times of national crisis or celebration, the Crossroads had provided space for shared experience. "This is why we're reopening," Elena realized aloud. "Not just to run a business, but to restore this function, this beating heart of Pine Creek." Loretta nodded approvingly. "You understand now. That's why everyone's helping. They remember what the Crossroads meant, even if they couldn't articulate it until you reminded them by taking this on." That night at the motel, Elena reviewed her journey since arriving in Pine Creek. The desperate gamble of purchasing the diner had evolved into something far more meaningful than mere financial salvation. She had inadvertently tapped into the community's deeply held desire for continuity amid change, for preservation of identity while embracing necessary evolution. The children slept peacefully despite the uncertainty surrounding them. Their adaptability continued to amaze Elena, finding excitement in challenges, connecting with community members across generations, transforming a precarious situation into adventure. Monday's deadline loomed with ominous potential. Mountain views, resources, and determination suggested difficult confrontations ahead, yet Elena felt strangely serene. The path forward was clear, not because success was guaranteed, but because the effort itself had intrinsic value regardless of outcome. She had discovered something profound in Pine Creek, that creating space for community connection represented purpose beyond profit. The Crossroads would reopen not because it promised financial prosperity, but because it offered something increasingly rare and precious, authentic human interaction in a shared physical space with deep historical significance. Whatever Mountain View attempted after Monday's deadline, they fundamentally misunderstood what they faced. Their opposition wasn't a single determined woman with limited resources, but an entire community rediscovering its collective identity and power. As Elena drifted toward sleep, she realized that the true value of the Crossroads had nothing to do with hidden military communications or Cold War secrets. Its worth lay in its function as a crossroads of human experience, where paths intersected, where stories were shared, where community was continually created through the simple act of breaking bread together. This was worth fighting for, regardless of the challenges ahead. Monday dawned with the quiet tension of anticipated confrontation. Elena arrived at the diner before sunrise, determined to accomplish as much as possible before Mountain Views. Deadline expired. To her surprise, she found she wasn't alone. Jack Brennan was already there, installing security lighting around the building's perimeter. "Figured today might bring trouble," he explained simply. "Better to be prepared." By 7 o'clock, an unexpected stream of volunteers began arriving. Townsfolk who should have been at their regular Monday jobs appeared instead with tools, supplies, and resolute expressions. No one directly mentioned Kazarian's deadline, but their presence communicated clear solidarity. "Took the day off," Stan Murray explained, when Elena expressed surprise at seeing the hardware store owner on a business day. "Store can manage without me. Some things matter more than retail sales." This sentiment echoed throughout the morning as Pine Creek citizens mobilized with remarkable efficiency. The health inspector arrived for the final review, guided through the space by Jack, who had meticulously ensured compliance with every regulation. The gas company completed the line inspection and activation. Henry's team finished the last equipment installations and tested all systems. By noon, the transformation bordered on miraculous. The Crossroads Diner stood ready for operation, gleaming, functional and infused with both historical character and modern efficiency. What should have taken months had been accomplished in days through collective determination. "We should be able to handle a soft opening this weekend," Elena told the assembled volunteers during a lunch break. "Limited menu, reduced hours, while we work out operational kinks." The announcement prompted spontaneous applause. Community members who had initially dismissed her as a naive outsider now looked at Elena with something approaching admiration. She had not only persisted against considerable obstacles, but had catalyzed collective action that transcended individual interests. As the afternoon progressed without any appearance by Mountain View representatives, a cautious optimism began to emerge. Perhaps Kazarian had reconsidered his approach. Perhaps federal interest in his activities had dampened his aggressive acquisition tactics. This hope evaporated at precisely 3 o'clock when Diane Porter arrived, accompanied not by Kazarian, but by 3 individuals whose formal attire and document cases identified them as legal representatives. Elena Ramirez, the lead attorney, inquired with professional detachment. "I'm representing Mountain View Developments in the matter of zoning violations, permit irregularities, and health code concerns regarding this property." Elena maintained her composure despite the sinking feeling in her stomach. "All our permits are in order. The health inspection was completed this morning with full approval." The attorney smiled thinly. "Nevertheless, we've filed complaints with 17 different regulatory agencies, each requiring individual response and resolution. During investigation periods, commercial operations are typically suspended." The legal harassment Haze had predicted was unfolding with precision. Mountain View's strategy was clear: bury the fledgling business under avalanches of paperwork and compliance costs, draining Elena's limited resources before the diner could generate revenue. "Additionally," the attorney continued, "we've petitioned for historical review of modifications made to this structure, citing potential compromise of historically significant architectural elements." The irony was breathtaking. Mountain View, which planned to demolish the building entirely, suddenly concerned about historical preservation. The legal team presented Elena with a thick stack of documents before departing with mechanical courtesy. A heavy silence fell over the diner as the implications became clear. The regulatory challenges alone could delay opening for months. "Corporate bullying tactics," Stan muttered, examining one of the complaints. "Seen this before when national chains wanted local businesses out of prime locations." "Can they really stop us from opening?" Maya asked in a small voice. She had been arranging silverware into rolled napkins, preparation for the anticipated weekend opening. Elena hesitated, unwilling to lie, but equally unwilling to surrender hope. "They're creating obstacles," she explained carefully. "But obstacles can be overcome. Like in my video game," Daniel offered unexpectedly. "When the boss seems too powerful, you have to find creative ways to win, special combinations or hidden resources." His childish analogy carried surprising wisdom. Direct confrontation with Mountain View's legal resources would indeed be like fighting an overpowered opponent. Alternative approaches would be necessary. Robert Caldwell, who had been quietly observing the exchange, stepped forward. During military operations, when conventional tactics fail, asymmetric responses become essential. We need to change the nature of the conflict. Elena considered this perspective. What would that look like in this situation? Public exposure, Jack suggested immediately. These complaints are technically public record. The county newspaper should know about a large corporation using legal harassment against a small business. Community mobilization, Loretta added. Regulatory agencies respond to public pressure. Letters, calls, social media, demonstrating widespread support for the diner reopening. Political engagement, Tom Jenkins contributed. County commissioners have oversight of many regulatory functions. They should understand the economic development aspects of this situation. As the discussion continued, Elena witnessed another transformation, her personal challenge evolving into coordinated community action. People were already making calls, drafting letters, contacting media connections. The very tactics designed to isolate and overwhelm her had instead galvanized collective resistance. By evening, the strategy had taken coherent shape. Tom would approach the county commissioners. Jack would navigate the regulatory responses, leveraging his extensive knowledge of local codes and inspection requirements. Loretta would coordinate community outreach. The veterans would contact military associates with media connections to investigate Mountain View's activities at the former base. They've awakened something they didn't anticipate, George observed as the planning session concluded. Communities seem passive until threatened, then they remember their power. Eleanor returned to the motel that night with conflicting emotions. The legal obstacles presented genuine challenges that could potentially derail the reopening timeline. Yet the community's response had transformed a moment of crisis into remarkable solidarity. "Are we still opening this weekend?" Maya asked as they prepared for bed. Elena considered her answer carefully. "Maybe not officially, but I think we'll have a gathering here regardless, to show that the Crossroads isn't just a business that can be stopped by paperwork." As she spoke the words, an idea crystallized, a way to honor both the letter of potential regulatory restrictions while demonstrating the diner's essential community function. "Actually," she amended, "we're going to host a community potluck on Saturday. Not a commercial opening, a neighborhood gathering. Everyone brings something to share." Maya's eyes brightened with understanding. "So we're not selling food, just providing space for people to come together." "Exactly," Elena confirmed. "The Crossroads was always about more than commercial food service. It was where the community gathered during important moments." "And this is an important moment," Daniel concluded with surprising insight, "because we're fighting for something that matters." Tuesday morning found Eleanor implementing this alternative strategy. Rather than direct confrontation with Mountain View's legal maneuvers, she would demonstrate the diner's community value independent of its commercial function. "A potluck celebration of the Crossroads restoration," she explained to Loretta, who immediately grasped the concept's potential. Not technically a business opening, so many regulations wouldn't apply to a one-time community event. "Brilliant," Loretta approved. "I'll spread the word. Everyone brings a dish. We provide the gathering space and beverages. Showcases exactly what makes the diner important beyond commercial concerns." The idea gained immediate traction. Community members embraced the opportunity to demonstrate solidarity while circumventing legal obstacles. Plans expanded rapidly. Local musicians offered to perform. Families volunteered to create heritage displays showcasing the diner's historical significance. The high school's media class proposed documenting the event for a community archive project. Meanwhile, the broader counteroffensive against Mountain View's tactics proceeded with surprising effectiveness. Tom Jenkins emerged from a meeting with county commissioners bearing news that the regulatory complaints would receive expedited review with consideration for economic development priorities. Bureaucratic language indicating political support for the diner's reopening. Jack systematically addressed each complaint, methodically documenting compliance and filing formal responses. His decades of experience with local building codes and inspection requirements proved invaluable in navigating what would have been overwhelming bureaucracy for Elena alone. Most significantly, Robert's media contacts produced results beyond expectation. A regional news outlet published an investigative piece questioning Mountain View's development practices, highlighting patterns of aggressive acquisition tactics across multiple communities. The article specifically mentioned the Crossroads situation, framing it as emblematic of corporate strategies that prioritize profit over community heritage. By Wednesday, public sentiment had shifted decisively. Social media campaigns generated hundreds of supportive messages. The county newspaper ran an editorial criticizing outside interests attempting to reshape Pine Creek without respecting its character. Local businesses displayed "Support the Crossroads" signs in their windows. Elena marveled at the transformation. What Mountain View had intended as isolating legal harassment had instead created unprecedented unification. Pine Creek residents who had initially regarded her with skepticism now defended her vision as essential to their community identity. This shifting dynamic became unmistakable Thursday morning, when a Pine Creek Town Council meeting was hastily convened to address community development concerns. Elena attended at Tom's suggestion, expecting procedural discussions of the regulatory complaints. Instead, she found the town hall packed with citizens bearing homemade signs supporting the Crossroads. Mayor Thompson, a traditionally reserved figure who had maintained neutrality regarding Mountain View's activities, opened proceedings with unexpected directness. Recent events have raised important questions about Pine Creek's development direction, he began. Outside investment offers economic opportunities, but must respect our community's character and heritage. What followed was a comprehensive reassessment of Mountain View's various permit applications, development proposals, and regulatory variances, all suddenly subject to additional community impact review. The technical language barely disguised the underlying message. The corporation's strong-arm tactics had triggered a systematic re-evaluation of their entire Pine Creek operation. Victor Kazarian himself appeared midway through the meeting, his typical composure noticeably strained as he grasped the shifting circumstances. His attempts to redirect the conversation toward economic benefits and job creation were met with skeptical questions about specific commitments, community protections, and accountability measures. When Kazarian spotted Elena in the audience, his expression hardened momentarily before he approached her during a recess. "Impressive mobilization, Ms. Ramirez," he acknowledged with grudging respect, though ultimately futile. Mountain View has resources to outlast small-town resistance. "This isn't about resources," Elena replied calmly. "It's about understanding what communities truly value. The Crossroads represents something your market analyses missed: the human need for connection and continuity." Kazarian studied her with recalculated assessment. "You've become a symbol for them," he observed, "the outsider who recognized what locals had forgotten, their own heritage. Ironic. Perhaps we both misjudged each other," Elena suggested. "I assumed you were just another corporate developer. You assumed I was just another inexperienced small business owner." Something shifted in Kazarian's expression. A reassessment. "Mountain View adapts to changing circumstances, Ms. Ramirez. Perhaps we should discuss potential collaboration rather than opposition." The offer surprised Elena. though she maintained a neutral expression. What kind of collaboration? Mountain View's interest in the property remains, Kazarian explained, but alternative arrangements could be mutually beneficial. The diner's historical significance could complement our development vision rather than conflict with it. Elena recognized the tactical retreat disguised as compromise. "I'm open to discussion," she replied carefully. After Saturday's community gathering at the Crossroads, as Kazarian departed, Agent Haze materialized beside Elena with uncanny timing. "Interesting development," she observed quietly. "They're changing approach." "Genuine compromise or strategic repositioning?" Elena asked. "Both, potentially," Haze replied. "Our investigation into the mountain facility has accelerated. They're aware of federal interest now, likely reconsidering risk factors across their operation." The remainder of Thursday and Friday passed in whirlwind preparation for Saturday's community gathering. The potluck concept had expanded into something approaching a heritage festival centered around the diner. Community members contributed not just food, but memories, photographs, memorabilia, written recollections of significant moments experienced at the Crossroads throughout its decades of operation. Elena worked alongside volunteers, transforming the diner into both functional gathering space and living museum. Display boards chronicled its evolution from 1957, opening through various renovations and historical moments. The back wall featured an annotated timeline connecting the diner's history with broader national events, subtly acknowledging its role during the Cold War without revealing classified aspects. Most poignantly, a memorial section honored Joseph Harper Sr. and Jr., father and son, who had maintained the diner through decades of economic fluctuation, technological change, and social transformation. Loretta contributed family photographs, showing the Harpers in their element, serving customers, preparing special dishes, hosting community celebrations. "Joe would have approved of you," Loretta told Elena as they arranged the display. "He valued determination and community connection above everything. The diner was never just business to him. It was purpose." Saturday morning arrived with unexpected atmospheric cooperation, clear skies and mild temperature perfect for an event that would inevitably spill onto the sidewalks and adjacent square. Elena arrived at dawn to find Robert, George, and Mike already there, performing a security sweep with methodical precision. "Force of habit," Robert explained with a slightly embarrassed smile. "Once military, always military." By 10 o'clock, the transformation was complete. The Crossroads gleamed with polished chrome and restored vintage elements while incorporating modern functionality. Historical displays created conversation focal points throughout the space. The kitchen, while not officially operating commercially, stood ready for beverage service and potluck coordination. Elena surveyed the space with quiet satisfaction, scarcely recognizing the dilapidated building she had purchased just 2 weeks earlier. More remarkable than the physical renovation was her own transformation, from desperate outsider to community catalyst. "Mom, people are already lining up outside," Maya called from the front window, her excitement palpable. She and Daniel had embraced their roles as hosts with remarkable enthusiasm, wearing vintage-inspired Crossroads aprons sized to fit them. Elena opened the doors precisely at 11, welcoming the first wave of community members bearing potluck contributions. The crowd's size immediately exceeded expectations, stretching down the block and around the corner, with more arriving. Continuously, what followed transcended Elena's most optimistic vision. The gathering evolved organically into a celebration of community identity with the diner as its physical manifestation. Families shared multi-generational stories of Crossroads experiences. Musicians performed songs mentioning the diner in their lyrics. Children created art depicting their imagined future visits. Most significantly, people connected across typical social boundaries. Farmers engaged with teachers, retirees with teenagers, lifelong residents with newcomers. The physical space facilitated interactions that might never have occurred otherwise, demonstrating exactly what Elena had articulated to Kazarian: the human need for connection and continuity. Midway through the afternoon, Mayor Thompson requested everyone's attention for an impromptu announcement. In recognition of the Crossroads Diner's historical significance, he proclaimed with formal dignity, the Town Council has unanimously designated it as Pine Creek's first heritage business site, with accompanying protections against demolition or significant architectural alteration. The crowd erupted in spontaneous applause. This designation represented more than symbolic recognition. It created legal protection against Mountain View's original development plans, regardless of potential property acquisition. Additionally, the mayor continued once the noise subsided, all pending regulatory complaints against the property have been expedited for resolution. I'm pleased to announce that proper permits for commercial operation have been approved, effective immediately. Elena stood momentarily speechless as community members surrounded her with congratulations and support. The bureaucratic obstacles that should have taken months to navigate had been resolved through unprecedented community and political mobilization. Throughout the celebration, Elena noticed Victor Kazarian observing from a discreet distance, his expression unreadable. Eventually, he approached as the crowd thinned late afternoon. "Congratulations, Ms. Ramirez," he offered with what appeared to be genuine acknowledgement. "You've achieved something remarkable." "Thank you," Elena replied simply. "Though I can't take credit. This was collective achievement." Kazarian nodded thoughtfully. "Mountain View's development strategy for Pine Creek will be substantially revised. Your heritage designation changes certain assumptions. I'm still open to discussion about complementary rather than competitive visions," Elena reminded him. "As am I," Kazarian confirmed, "though circumstances at our mountain facility development have evolved. Our timeline has been adjusted." The careful phrasing suggested federal investigation had indeed impacted Mountain View's operations. Elena maintained appropriate ignorance of any such connection. "Pine Creek benefits from thoughtful development that respects its character," she offered diplomatically. "The crossroads can coexist with progress." After Kazarian's departure, Agent Haze approached with her first genuine smile since their acquaintance began. "Operation concluded successfully at the mountain facility," she reported quietly. "Classified material recovered, security compromises addressed. Mountain View's foreign connections have been disrupted." "So it's over?" Elena asked, scarcely believing resolution could come so suddenly after days of escalating tension. "This phase, yes," Hayes confirmed, "though we'll maintain monitoring of certain activities. Your cooperation proved invaluable, providing time and distraction while we completed the mountain operation." Elena felt oddly conflicted, relieved the security situation had resolved, yet strangely disappointed that her diner's significance might diminish with the crisis conclusion. Hayes seemed to read this concern. "The Crossroads has proven its value beyond our operation," she observed. "What you've catalyzed here continues independently of security concerns." As evening approached, the gathering gradually transitioned to clean-up efforts, with community members automatically organizing themselves into efficient teams. Elena found herself momentarily apart from the activity, observing from the diner's entrance as sunset painted Main Street in golden light. The scene before her embodied transformation, physical, social, and personal. The dilapidated building, purchased from desperation, had become a vibrant community center. The skeptical town had embraced both her vision and her family. Her own perspective had evolved from seeing the diner as merely financial salvation to recognizing its profound community function. Maya appeared beside her, uncharacteristically reflective. "This is home now, isn't it?" she asked. "Not just where we live, but where we belong." Elena nodded, unable to speak, past the emotion tightening her throat. After years of struggling alone, they had found not just shelter, but community, not just opportunity, but purpose. Daniel joined them, proudly wearing the vintage Crossroads Cabloretta had discovered in storage. "When do we start serving those secret agent milkshakes?" he asked practically. "People keep asking about them." "Our official opening is next weekend," Elena confirmed, smiling at his entrepreneurial enthusiasm. "Today was about community. Next week, we become a real business." As they stood together watching the sunset reflect off the diner's newly restored neon sign, Elena recognized the most significant discovery of their unexpected journey. The value of the Crossroads had never been hidden in its floor safe or concealed in its walls. The true treasure lay in its function as genuine crossroads, where diverse paths intersected, where community identity was continuously renewed through shared experience, where belonging transcended mere geography. What had begun as $500 desperate dollars invested in an abandoned building had yielded returns no financial calculation could measure. A renewed community, a restored heritage, and most importantly, a place where 3 displaced souls had finally found home. The diner's original name, chosen decades earlier for its physical location at a rural intersection, had proven prophetic in ways Joseph Harper Sr. could never have anticipated. The Crossroads stood once again at the junction of past and future, tradition and innovation, individual enterprise and collective identity, demonstrating that the most meaningful destinations often emerge from the most unlikely beginnings. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.